I have spent the last half century being interested in wine as a collector and as a wine educator. I began doing courses in the 80s. And in my retirement, I take people to Greece for culture, history, wine, and food tours. And this fall, we're taking the 8th group to Greece. And this half century of being interested in this subject is really not because this is something that tastes good. There are a lot of things that taste good that I don't obsess about. I certainly don't hold courses on them. And it is the backdrop of wine, the history, the regions, the villages, the people, the soil, the patches of ground. After centuries of experimenting, people have come to know what grows best in this patch of land. That connection is something you have heard about today, the rootedness, the sense of place, agriculture. And Errol Asher was a wine book writer, and he coined the term somewhereness, the somewhereness of wine, how important that is. And that's the part that has excited me about the subject. There's a lot of romance about wine, and maybe a lot of that is unfounded. There's a lot of almost like mysticism about it, generating a lot of elitism that making people think, oh, maybe that's not my thing. And I think that's taking it in the wrong place. You think about the history of wine. Wine doesn't need to be, or never needed to be invented. When you take a bunch of grapes, we all have done that. You see that little grayish bloom on the berries, that kind of a dusty look, and that's actually yeast cells. Yeast in the air is collected through the growing season, just like a sourdough starter would collect yeast from the air. And that yeast is really the start of it all. And imagine yourself as an ancient person, perhaps several thousand years ago. Grapes are unique that after you pick them, they don't get better, like a pear or an apricot or a mango. After a few days, it's actually better. Grapes don't do that. After you pick it, it goes spoils rather quickly. So as an ancient, what would be the obvious way that you might preserve it? You press the juice out. And when you press the juice out, you already have the yeast there, and grapes naturally ripen to about 20-ish% sugar and about just less than 1% acidity. And that, with the yeast already there, is really a complete package. It makes itself. In a week, you have wine whether you want it or not. And that's kind of tells you why it doesn't need to be invented. As an ancient, without refrigeration, actually it's pretty stable because that would lead to about enough alcohol and acidity to be relatively stable. And the history is murky, but the Romans had a lot to do with spreading it along the path of exporting really the Roman way of life. Next big event would be the church. Church people were the most educated people in society, the most literate people in society. And when they were attending vineyards, they were able to write down what they have done and to pass on the knowledge, to experiment. So actually, these methods actually improved over the centuries and grew. And the next big event would be in the late medieval era, when commercial interest, the merchant class, became owners of these fields. And of course, the commercial interest persisted to our days, and commercial interest owning facilities and owning land. But all of that notwithstanding, family ownership of vineyard is still a very big part of viticulture. If you go to any wine-growing region in the world, you will find local co-ops that are owned by farmers. Farmers individually do not have all the resources to make wine and to market wine, but when you group together as a co-op, that gives you the power. And grape is a complete package that I have said and it's all there already, so the invention is really unnecessary. There's a very famous, well-known in the wine world, a woman in Burgundy. Her name is Bise Laloux-Lacroix, as in Leroy. Bise is in her 90s now. And Bise once said that every drop of wine, every glass of wine you drink was once groundwater. Think about that, groundwater. The groundwater would pass through the woody part of the trunk, and it reaches the vegetative part of the plant. It's eventually reaching the berry, it becomes berries, filling the berries. And B said, the soil, the ground speaks to you. Now, what does that mean? And she also said, the ground speaks to you, but through many filters. The filters are the particular grape variety that may have a family of flavors, the growing season, the sun, the rain, and all those qualities. As a grower, your job is to nurture that groundwater into the berries so it will have all these flavors available. Now, when you read about a wine in a wine magazine, you often hear about these words of analogy. Words of analogy are maybe like, oh, this one tastes like citrus. Oh, it reminds me of apples, or blackberries, or leather, or tobacco. And where do all these flavors come from? As a winemaker, you cannot add anything. It's almost illegal in most places to add, unless you're making a flavored wine and you have to disclose that on the label. So you really don't add. Where do all these flavors come from? It came from the grapes, came from the ground, it came from the land. And the winemakers is really a nurturer, and they do not add. They do not add anything to whatever is there, but you can subtract. Almost every winemaker I've known would agree that you got to go with the flow. The grapes tell you what you're going to have, and if the quality isn't there, you cannot make it up. You cannot add. But if you mess up, you can take off a lot. And that view is a view that most of us don't think about, that there is a culture of putting winemakers in sort of a celebrity status, and that's really for marketing and for selling wine. And when you read a magazine, a wine may be rated in 100 scale, and there are actually local liquor stores that have a section, wines with 100 points, 90 points or more. But that's not how you learn about wine, because you will not learn about the people, the culture, the place, the history. It would just be for consumerism, but that's not how it's done. There is actually no French word for winemaker. There's a word called, vigneron. Vigneron is the grower. There is a term called maître de chai, the master of the cellar. And a maître de chai job is upbringing. The wine is already made. He's in charge of aging it and taking care of it and making sure oxygen doesn't get there. But again, he's not adding. He's making sure that there's no subtracting. And I am at the point of about 4:30. You are about to enjoy maybe a glass of wine. But when you do, think about the groundwater that you're drinking. Think about the grower. Think about all the qualities that is grown in the ground. It is not a manufactured product. It is an agricultural product. As I said earlier, my theme echoes many of the things you heard today. Somewhereness, sense of place, history, culture, agriculture. And that's all I have for you today. Enjoy your next glass of wine. Think about the whispering sound of the earth, of the vineyard, of the soil. Thank you.